Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this is going to be long. This is going to be a long one. As you can see from the title, these are my favorite books that have Christian themes in them. There's not a lot of books that have Christian themes in them. So it's not just a straight up Christian book, like you're going to go to hell, you're going to go to heaven, an angel comes down and all that crazy stuff. So yeah, it's basically just regular books that are awesome, bestsellers, classics, and they have themes of Christianity in them. And when I read them, I was like, oh wow, we're doing this? Great stuff. Okay, so the first book is The 5 Love Languages. So The 5 Love Languages, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate, is a 1992 book by Gary Chapman. It outlines 5 general ways that romantic partners express their love for each other, which Chapman calls the love languages. They are acts of service, gift giving, physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. What I got from the book was basically the fact that if you love to show your love to your friends, your family, you can buy them gifts. Then that is your love language. But then if someone wants to show you their love, you prefer it if they were to spend quality time with you or do the dishes for you, acts of service. So it works in 2 ways. Otherwise you can have a majority one, you can have more than one. And it's important to note so that if your mom keeps giving you gifts but she doesn't like to spend time with you, you can take note that, oh yeah, her love language is gift giving. That's how she shows me her love. But if your love language is quality time and she's neglecting you, like emotionally, you can tap into that and then find out how to move from there. So it's a very insightful book, and I love how in between each chapter there's like verses from the Bible that talks about love and the love God has for us and how we should show love unto others. So it was just absolutely amazing and incredible to read. Examples are given from his counseling practice, as well as questions to help determine one's own love language. According to Chapman's theory, each person has one primary and one secondary love language. Okay, so it says, Chapman suggests that to discover another person's love language, one must observe the way they express love to others and analyze what they complain about most often when they request from their significant other most often. He theorizes that people tend to generally or naturally give love in the way that they prefer to receive love, and better communication between couples can accomplish when one can demonstrate caring to the other person in the love language the recipient understands. An example would be if a husband's love language is acts of service, he may be confused when he does the laundry for his wife and she doesn't perceive that as an act of love, viewing it as simply performing household duties. So she becomes ungrateful because the love language she comprehends is words of affirmation, verbal affirmations that he loves her. She may try to use that or what she values, words of affirmations, to express her love to him, which he would not value as much as she does. If she understands his love language and mows the lawn for him, he would perceive it in his love language as an act of expressing her love for him. Likewise, if he tells her he loves her, she values that as an act of love. Incredible. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so it does have validity in psychometrics. The perceptions. The book sold 8,500 copies in its first year. Think about this. This was in the 90s. 4 times what the publishers expected. The following year, it sold 17,000 copies, and 2 years later, 137,000 copies. It was a New York Times bestseller in 2009. Okay, when reading the reviews, it's obvious to see that people have an issue with the Christianity being mentioned in this book. The demons in people really get triggered when you mention the Bible, Jesus, or God. Okay, the next book is The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Shinchevel-Shi. So, The Game of Life and How to Play It was published in 1925, and it teaches the philosophies of its author, Florence Shinchevel-Shi. The book holds that ignorance of or carelessness with the application of various laws of metaphysics can bring about undesirable life events. spiritual concepts discussed in the book. The law of expectation. Shin emphasizes the power of the imagination to bring about life's events. Whatever man feels deeply or imagines clearly is impressed upon the subconscious mind and carried out in the minutest of details. The power of words. Jesus Christ taught that man's words played a leading part in the game of life. By your words ye are justified, and by your words ye are condemned. Matthew 12, verse 37. One thing that I liked about this book is the fact that it takes the law of manifestation that has become really crazy and popular right now. So law of attraction and just manifestation in general, talking to the universe. I don't like that, because then it implies that the universe has power over us, that we have power over ourselves with the words that we say. And yes, the Bible does say that there is power in the tongue, but this book, what's amazing about it is that it emphasizes that you're supposed to say things in Jesus' name. So using the Lord's name to get what you need out of life. But obviously there's a lot of implications, a lot of nuances to just asking and you will receive. Okay, so the divine pattern and intuitions. Shin says that one must always ask for the right circumstance or the divine selection and not to ask for specifics. The law of substitution. According to Florence, sometimes our desires are misdirected. Many people are in ignorance of their true destinies and are striving for things and situations which do not belong to them and would only bring failure and dissatisfaction. So one example I can think of, not from the book but from Derek Prince, is the fact that he said a husband really hated his wife's cooking. So then one day he was like, your cooking is making me sick. I hope you never set foot in the kitchen ever again. And after that, she developed anxiety. She couldn't cook anymore. She couldn't enter the kitchen without shaking and getting dizzy, lightheaded. And for him, he got stomach poisoning or stomach cancer or something. So it was just like his words really had power. Okay, and then she talks of the law of karma, which as a Christian, I do not believe in karma. That is Indian, Hindu, mysticism type of beliefs, and it is not part of Christian doctrine. And then there's the law of non-resistance. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt, as is with life. Certain things do have Christian themes, of course. That's what this entire thing is about. But certain things, it like mixes in New Age beliefs with the original Christian belief system. Okay, so then it talks about the law of forgiveness. Christianity is founded upon the law of forgiveness. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the karmic law, they say, and the Christ within each man is his redeemer and salvation from all harmonious conditions. So listen, I'm young, I don't know what any of this means. I just read it and I was very entertained, but also like enlightened, felt empowered. I can get what I want in the name of Jesus, but don't always follow false doctrine that may sound like the real thing. Okay, so about Jesus being in us, I don't know about that, but I know that when he was leaving, he told the apostles, I'm leaving, but the Holy Spirit will come upon you and be in you. So yes, okay. And then we have Brideshead Revisited. Brideshead Revisited, the sacred and profane memories of Captain Charles Ryder. This is a novel by English writer Evelyn Waugh, I don't know, first published in 1945. It follows from the 1920s to the early 1940s the life and romances of the protagonist, Charles Ryder, most especially his friendship with Flights, a family of wealthy English Catholics who live in a palatial mansion called Brideshead Castle. This book, I loved it. And it was after I read someone's Goodreads comment on The Secret History and the fact that Donna Tartt ripped off the entire book and then changed it a little bit and said it towards the 1950s. I was like, she robbed the ideas of this book. And I love The Secret History. The Secret History is one of my favorite books. So I was like, let me read this book. And I did love how it discussed Catholic themes in detail. Because then there's some things that I didn't even know. And I'm Catholic. Okay, so it continues on to say, Ryder has relationships with two of the flights, Sebastian and Julia, the novels explores themes including nostalgia for the age of English aristocracy, Catholicism, and I'm not really sure about the homosexuality, yeah, but it's kind of blatantly obvious, yes, but I would like to focus on the Catholicism. So, a fully and well-received television adaptation of the novel was produced in 1981. So, Catholicism is a significant theme of the book. Evelyn Woe was a convert to Catholicism, and Brideshead depicted the Catholic faith in a secular literary form. So it's much deeper, becoming a spiritual individual, in religion is one thing compared to just converting and then reading a book about stuff. It's not, you don't experience the same thing, the same holiness that you experience knowing that there are so many people just like you that want to experience God, that want to build a relationship with Him. So, Evelyn wrote to his literary agent, "I hope the last conversation with Cordelia gives the theological clue. The whole thing is steeped in theology, but I begin to agree that the theologians won't recognize it." The book brings the reader through the narration of the initial agnostic Charles Ryder in contact with several flawed but deeply Catholic flight family members. The Catholic themes of divine grace and reconciliation are pervasive in the book. Most of the major characters undergo a conversion in some way or another. Lord Marchmain, a convert from Anglicanism to Catholicism, who lived as an adulterer, is recognized with the church on his deathbed. Now, I'm telling you, that was the funniest scene ever. He was on his deathbed and he was refusing the priest, which reminded me of my priest at my church. He was like, every time he went to give the sacrament of the sick, I'm sorry, I'm not that good. The person would die after he would give the sacraments, and then he was labeled as the angel of death. I was like, oh no, if I'm on my deathbed, don't bring that priest near me. And that's exactly what Lord Marchmain was like. He was on his deathbed and he was like, get that priest away from me. And I was just like, you old man, you can't be like this, you're about to die. And it was so funny and entertaining, and it felt good to have like Christian, specifically Catholic representation in literature. So Julia, who entered a marriage with Rex Mortran that is invalid in the eyes of the Catholic Church, is involved in an extramarital affair with Charles. I'm confused. So Julia realizes that marrying Charles will separate her forever from her faith and decides to leave him, in spite of her great attraction to him. Sebastian, the charming and flamboyant alcoholic, ends up in the service to a monastery while struggling against alcoholism. Most significant is Charles' apparent conversion, which is expressed subtly at the end of the book, set more than 20 years after his first meeting Sebastian. Charles kneels down in front of the tabernacle of the Brideshead chapel and says a prayer and acts an ancient, newly learned form of words, implying recent instructions in the catechism. So, Evelyn speaks of his beliefs in grace in a letter to Lady Mary Lygon. I believe that everyone in his or her life has the moment when he is open to divine grace. It's either there, of course, for the asking all the time, but human lives are so planned that usually there's a particular time, sometimes like Hubert on his deathbed, when all resistance is down and grace can come flooding in. It's so cool and inspiring. I feel so happy to have read this book. It is an English novel. I wanted to get more into reading religious themed novels, specifically like Jewish themed novels that aren't about the Holocaust, because it seems as if the only thing they want to feed us is like the traumas of minority groups. But okay, so now we move on to Dante's Inferno. Okay, Dante's Inferno. I must confess that so much was beyond my comprehension, but I think that it is the mark of great works of art. It allows you to take what you can from it, from where you can. Okay, so it is divided into the Divine Comedy or La Divina Commedia. The Divine Comedy, or Italian Divina Commedia, is a long Italian narrative poem by Dante Alighieri, begun in 1308 and completed in 1320, a year before his death in 1321. It is widely considered to be the preeminent work in Italian literature and one of the greatest works of world literature. The poem's imaginative vision of the afterlife is representative of the medieval world view as it was and had developed in the Western Church. By the 14th century, it helped establish the Tuscan language in which it is written as the standardized Italian language. It is divided into three parts: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. I wanted to learn Italian after reading this. I never managed to finish because it was just so long and like detailed, and I'm still like writing tests and stuff. So I'm very excited. I watched these videos by the overdone production. I don't know, it's a YouTube channel and they just made it sound so interesting. I watched the whole thing. There's lots of spoilers because they're basically explaining the whole book, and I love spoilers. For me, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So if we find out that this character ends up in hell and they die there, then it's just like, how did that happen? What interactions did they have until the very end? So I love spoilers. I love getting to the end of the book knowing what's about to happen. Okay, so those videos will be linked down below. The narrative takes as the narrative takes as its literal subject the state of the soul after death and presents an image of divine justice meted out as due punishment or reward, and describes Dante's travels through hell, purgatory, and the paradise of heaven. Allegorically, the poem represents the soul's journey towards God, beginning with the recognition and rejection of sin in Inferno, followed by the penitent Christian life in Purgatorio, which is then followed by the soul's ascension to God, Paradiso. Dante draws on medieval Roman Catholic theology and philosophy, especially Thomistic philosophy derived from the Summa Theologica of Thomas Aquinas. So there's a whole lot here that still went over my head. So many references to old classic writers, epic poems, and like much more that I could not comprehend with, but I still enjoyed knowing, oh my goodness, there's like 16 layers of hell. There's a special place in hell for Hitler and Genghis Khan. There's a certain place in hell for people who litter, who smoke cigarettes. There's a lake of burning fire where centaurs are like ripping your heart out. I was thoroughly fearful and entertained. Okay, so the work was so you can recognize small truths because it is the opposite of a falsehood. The opposite of a great truth is another truth. That's from Niels Bohr. I was thinking about Dante the other day and wondered how one could approach him from the angle of a review. One of the obvious problems is that he lived a long time ago and many of the cultural references have changed. You're constantly having to think, well, nowadays what he's saying would correspond to that. It isn't so bad in hell when there is plenty of entertainment to be had in seeing how the different sins are punished and indulging your shadow fraud. Then purgatory tells a moral story that's more or less timeless if you go for that sort of thing. But once you arrive in paradise, it starts getting seriously tricky. A lot of the stuff at first sight just seems irrelevant to the 21st century world. All these explanations about the mechanics of Ptolemaic astronomy and Dante querying the inhabitants of heaven on obscure theological points. It's notorious that readers most often give up somewhere in the third book. I started wondering if there was any modern day author one could identify with Dante, and if that might help us connect to his concerns. And in fact, I do have a suggestion that people will no doubt condemn out of hand as completely heretic. So I'm not going to go into detail on that, on what he's about to say. So he basically talks about Richard Dawkins. I don't know who that is. Oh yes, he's an atheist. So I will not go into details on that, but you can do your research if you wish. Okay, so P.S. I couldn't help wondering what paradise might have looked like if Dante had been writing today. Obviously, we wouldn't have the old geocentric model of the universe. It would be bang up to date. I think there is now far more material for ambitious poets to work with than there was in the 14th century. For example, when we get to heaven of the galaxy, I imagine him using his wonderful facts. All the heavy elements are made in supernova explosions. We are all stardust, as some people like to put it. Then, when we get to the heaven of the cosmos, we find that the light from the let there be light moment at the beginning of creation is still around, and it's just cooled to 2.7 degrees Kelvin and appears at the cosmic backgrounds of radiation, but it's not completely uniform, as the quantum fluctuations left over the periods when the universe was the size of an atomic nucleus are the beginnings of the galaxies created on the second day. Finally, we reach heaven of the multiverse and find that we are just one of the many different universes. It was necessary to create all these. That random process could make sure that a very small number would end up being able to support life. How impious to assume. I have no idea. Listen, I believe that God created us. As far as going out into the world and exploring other universes, that's what all these billionaires are trying to do with their spaceships and space rockets. Let them go. In a part of the Bible, they tried to build a tower to reach heaven, and we all know how that ended up. So let them try. I just want to go to heaven, that's all. Okay, so now the last book we have is Paradise Lost. Okay, and this is by John Milton. Paradise Lost is an epic Christian poem in blank verse by the 17th century epic poet John Milton. The first version, published in 1667, consisted of 10 books with over 10,000 lines of verses. A second edition followed, arranged in 12 books in the manner of Virgil's Aeneid, with minor revisions throughout. It is considered to be Milton's masterpiece, and it helped solidify his reputation as one of the greatest English poets of his time. The poem concerns the biblical story of the fall of man, the temptation of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan, and their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. I only found out about this book because I read The Secret History, and one of the characters, Henry, was translating it into Latin. I didn't know it was real until I did research, and I was like, this is a real book. A real person actually made it. And yeah, so now an honorary mention to book all, if not any, books by C.S. Lewis. He was an atheist that was converted to Christianity with the aid of what's his name, J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. So that's just a very interesting fact that I love to just tell people randomly. Also, J.R.R. Tolkien was born in South Africa in the early 1900s, if not the late 1800s. So that's just fun to know. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Pick up one of these books. If not, pick up all of them. And then leave a comment if you have read them. If you have any recommendation for Christian books to read, because I really want to get into them more. I want to just get closer to God. Or you could just post your favorite Bible verse. Please post your favorite Bible verse. I want to read it. I want to feel inspired. Enjoy your day.